folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the snowy landscape of Scotland. And today I've parked the car at this little lay-by here at the top of Glen Doll. And I'm basically thinking I'm going to head, there's a track takes me down the other side of the valley here, and I think there's some cool old abandoned history hidden within the forest at the other side. So I'm hoping on today's adventure we can make it right over there and see what history remains. But there has been extreme snow in these high glens here, so we're dealing with that on the adventure. The main road has been kind of in this condition. There is patches of snow on it, but I think once I go up the path beside this farm, it'll be pure snow that I'm walking on, and I'm not sure of the conditions further on. So yeah, let's get into action, folks, and see where we end up, see what history we can find hidden in the glen. Some years in Scotland we don't get much snow, but this year we've had a lot, and it's cool to come out on so many adventures and document places like this. I'm sure this is the path here that I need to go. There is a sign there, Glen Doll, and there's a big car park further around the corner, but I parked obviously in the lower car parks. It's nearer this road end. Yeah, let's head out into the middle of this glen. That's basically where this track goes. There should be a wee bridge over the river. I was thinking about going to Jock's Road at the top of here, but it's often a busier area with less to see, and I quite like the solitude or the kind of desolate landscape on a path like this, where there's often nobody kicking around. The landscape around here, look at this, the cliffs are so high, disappearing up into the clouds at the top there. Incredible sheer cliff faces on the land. Sometimes in the snow it's the best time to see that. You get an idea of how sheer the cliffs are when the snow's clinging to them. Both sides of this glen at the top here, it's just pure mountainous ranges. Look at the view looking back this way as well, folks, it is incredible. There was actually an old World War II Nissen hut there at that location, and that was maybe bought at the end of the war and moved up here, or it might have always been located here for back in the day. They maybe even used to do like military training or whatever up in these glens back in the day. I think there is still like a scout centre and a boys brigade or whatever it's called at that area, so that's an interesting thing as well. There's lots going on in the glens of Scotland, folks. Some of my viewers were actually asking, like, where is the snow this year in Scotland? But this week we've been able to actually bring you snow. 3 of these adventures we've been out in the snow, and that's pretty cool. There was one adventure at the abandoned castle in the lower lands, and that was, you could see the difference between the weather at the high kind of glens and then the lower farmlands. And it's interesting to hear that mixture as well within 1 week. So many wee adventures and just fun little nuggets of Scotland, wee corners of Scotland like this. It's just truly a winter wonderland around here. Look at this scene here, folks. Let's just take a second to take it in. It's just magical. Here we are, folks, we've made it to the little bridge here. It's a snow covered bridge today, and there is other footprints leading over here. It looks like people's been walking their dogs. Wow, what a scene. The river meandering its way through the foot of the glen here, and our historical wonder is not far up ahead. There's a whole abandoned ancient settlement round this corner, a bit like an old Croft or whatever. But when I came here, it was one time in the summer and it was totally overgrown, and it's mad to come back and just see the difference of the land. Everything's so bright when the snow's on the ground, but often it's easier to see the outlines of like old buildings and remains of history, which is pretty cool. So on the right hand side here, this is the start of the farm Croft. There's loads of remains of foundations, including this one in front of us. We can see the first wall that leads right along. But even right next to the path here, we've got this incredible little building, abandoned remains of an ancient settlement. And on this site here, there's so many little buildings and ruins. It's incredible to see the last remains of this. Right now, we'd be standing inside a little building at a certain time in history, and it would have probably been 1700s and such like, maybe even earlier times. Places like this would have been a thriving little croft up in the Glen. Wow, let's head on up. I think the original track would have gone up that way into the Croft. So I'll head up a little bit and document more of the walls, and I'll show you where I think the Croft cottage and stuff would have been, because there is still remains of the main house walls. And it's kind of over that direction there. The house walls at these old crofts is always constructed different to the dry stone walls of the surrounding like walls and buildings where the fields and that are. It's interesting to see the different stonework they did. Often they built things with the stones that they gathered out here on these hills, because as we've seen from earlier in the video, it's massive cliffs, and at the foot of those cliffs it's just boulders and big chunks of rock. Listen to that crunch of the snow underfoot right there, folks. Winter in Scotland, and this is just a Scottish paradise. The landscape all around, and then the wee nuggets of history hidden in the middle of it. Old walls. If walls could talk, they would tell the story of the history. Sometimes the first people to build these old crofts were the first people to actually settle these wild glens. They would drain their wee bit of land, level it and clear it of the stones, make some space for agriculture. And these walls is all that's left to tell that story. The ancient individual croft on the land. And there is quite a lot to this structure here. Wow. In a recent video this week, we did document an old kind of croft or a building where they would have sorted out sheep and stuff like that, but I think this one's actually bigger. And it's unplanned often, the historical wonders that I visit. It's just coincidence if there's like two old crofts or whatever, but I just love to see the differences in them and how they were constructed to fit within the bit of land they were built. The original farmers made the most with the land they had. And you have to imagine this croft before the days of the trees. Check it out here, folks, the wee wall lines. Maybe at one time a wee door at this corner. This would have been a little shed with the main door leading out. Probably letting sheep in and out, sorting them out. Even here, it's been a separate little room. This has been the door here. It's cool to see that. This has been, well, I would say this is one of the most complete buildings here. Often so many hundreds of years pass that literally it ends up just being walls like this. But at one time there would have been grand walls. Look at this one. This is some size of a wall for being a little field enclosure. And it just shows you build a wall like that, it lasts for hundreds of years. You go and buy posts and some wire, and you're having to go and replace it maybe 5 year or 10 year down the road because it rots out or decays. So it's maybe worth originally investing in a good dry stone dyke. It's generational. It's a generational construction, folks. And it's amazing to see this walls here have stood the test of time. To tell the story of that, it's cool. It's mad to imagine the original farmer and that as well coming out here. Maybe try to catch a certain sheep or an animal. Whoa, I'm going to try and navigate down these stones. The gamekeeper will come up here and see my footprints and think like, what has even been going on? Because it's just such a mad route I went round through there. But that was the historical documentation route I went. Anyway, let's head down and see where the wee cottage was. So when this croft was in its prime and this little house was sitting here with the chimney smoking on a winter's day like this, you have to imagine the original road probably didn't even come through here. The route that it goes today, it was probably up where we can see the original road into Croft and then onwards up the glen. Because it is interesting to see how close the buildings of this Croft go to the track. Potentially there was other little buildings which is now gone with the forest and the forest road. It is interesting to see what remains of this wall, and we can see the different construction of a house compared to the sheds or the dry stone walls in the perimeter. Look at the way this is built. Been far more grand and perfect masonry. At one time with limestone mortar, which would have been sourced and baked in a local lime kiln, probably at a farm or a location near here, because that was common practice back in the day. And this would have been the corner of the house wall at the front. And an interesting thing, you can see the original old dry stone dyke at the opposite side. It's been proper shaped and landscaped, and it must have curved around like a wee path around the house. And it's cool to see those details before they're gone forever. The original dry stone dyke continues along there. The landscape this place is set in is just absolutely incredible. This would have been the wee house, and just think who stood in this house at one time and what the conversations were that went on. It's just crazy. Historical wonders of Scotland, almost lost and forgotten in the remote places. There's not even a main road at this side of the river, just those old like forest tracks, little roads over the hill made with earth. I mean, let's keep this adventure moving, folks. It's like there's been a track coming in this way to the front door of the house. That is interesting as well. You have to imagine back at this time they had horse and carts, and obviously they were walking about a lot more than, there would have been no vehicles, so the tracks down to the house or all around the farm were often a bit narrower than what you would expect nowadays. Look at the view up behind here. Think how these mountains must have always looked similar to what they look like now, back at the time of the farm. There won't have ever been trees or green bushes growing on the face of those cliffs because they're so wild and desolate. It's only the little more level areas between the cliffs that the stuff can actually grow on. So parts of land like that hasn't changed much over the hundreds of years, but down here it's just changed so much. Today it's been cool to walk over here. I do like a winter walk. I think there's maybe been a dike line leading down there that I can see, but so many hundreds of years has passed. Okay, it's a place that's almost lost and forgotten, and it's been cool today to document it once again. There is actually another abandoned house down that direction. I have been to a few times, but we'll save that for a future adventure, folks. Now I need to navigate my way out. I'm thinking I'm going to go down to this little, there's a beach kind of area next to the river, so let's get down there for a look. Wow, look at this, through this little avenue of trees here. You can see the little pebbly beach at the side of the river is covered in snow today. And last time I was here I actually stood out in the middle of the river and I think I had my wellies on or whatever. But today it's so bitterly cold. Another cool thing when you walk out this side of the trees, just the vastness and the size of these hills at the other side. It's incredible. The landscape at Glen Doll and Glen Clova even further down, it's just breathtaking. Everywhere you turn, it's just magic. Even the view looking further down this way. Incredible scenes once again on the channel, folks, and it's winter scenes but also historical wonders hidden within it. And today the river's pretty low, but I'm sure once the snow starts melting the levels will rise. I'm just thinking I'll take a secondary route around to the little bridge. We'll follow the edge of the river here. This is an area of land obviously like I've never explored before. I've only ever come down for a look and then headed right back up the track, so I'm hoping there's a route round here. Sometimes at rivers you have to be careful because it can get washed out, and then when you stand on the grass it just falls down below your feet. Wow, what an area, folks, check it out. I've made it back to this bridge, and I'm not sure where the original bridge was over like the river back in the days of like the Croft and the historical times of like the 1700s. This bridge is far more modern, but there may have been an older bridge here before that. But it looked like from the Croft there would have been a track heading further up that direction, so the bridge could have really been anywhere. I could just hear so much birds and wildlife making their calls and their noises there. And I have seen a lot of birds of prey today out on my adventures. I love adventures like this, when you just head out, even though it's like 1 degree Celsius or lower, with the wind blowing. I think it's lower than that with the wind chill factor, but I just love adventures like this where I'm out in wild lands, looking at history or finding stuff I've never seen before, hidden in places like this. Whoa, slipping around on the ice. But when you first get out of the car you think, nah, it's too cold, like, eh? But after about 10 minutes you actually acclimatise, and then it's just a fun walk from that point onwards. And in the winter you can pretty much walk most places without having too bad like overgrown conditions. In the summer it's just a nightmare with the amount of bushes and greenery often. So that's why I enjoy winter for exploring. I always say exploring season, folks. And this is it, coming to places like this in crazy weather conditions or snowy environments. Look at the way the ice and snow is hanging on these bushes. That's what often makes the scene. When you see over a lot of that, just ends up covered. That's how a lot of the bushes and trees in Scotland are hardy. Sometimes the variation in conditions is amazing from summer to winter. They have to deal with obviously the frost and snow, but then in the summer they're getting scorched from the sunshine, sometimes 25 degrees Celsius, and in the winter it can be really cold up in these glens. Obviously 1 degree Celsius today, but it can go well into the minuses. And obviously you get snow and stuff up here when you don't get that down in the lower lands of the Glen, well, the lower lands of Angus I should say. Once you're out of the glens, a lot of the Angus glens is just one road up to the top, and you kind of hate to turn around and just come back down. It's just like a road into the wildest of places, and then each glen has got its own character. It's almost like going to a different country sometimes. A few miles down the road you go in a different glen and there's like no mountains, and then you go to the next one and there's mountains again, it's waterfalls. That's the cool thing about the Angus glens and places like that. That's been a cool variation of history this week again, folks. Quite a lot of really old history we found this week as well. Like, some of those farms obviously date back 1700s or before it. So that's how it's interesting to document them before they're gone forever. Some of my videos are obviously in abandoned buildings or more modern abandoned places. That's why it's cool to hear that mixture with the newer stuff. Here comes a car down the way. I was waiting to record the sign here, folks, check it out. Glen Doll Scotland National Nature Reserve. So there you can check it out. Forestry and Land Scotland. There is an area here, but it's a turning area, so that's why there's no cars parked. But wow, yeah, what a place, folks. My feet are covered in snow. It was definitely an adventure for the boots. It's been a short one, but a fun one, getting out and about in these conditions. I just love it, and I love the scenes all around. And to see that wee Croft in the winter like that, it's just mad. It's just the only thing poking out the snow almost at the far side of there. Anyway, I'm just about back to my car, folks, so I'm going to end this one here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next adventure, wherever we end up going, into the wild lands of Scotland.